November 1st, near the end of the Trinity term, John chapter 11, the raising of Lazarus. Okay, awesome. This is good stuff. You definitely hit the lottery, man, with this one. This is a great passage, and I know the kids are going to get a lot out of this. I went ahead and highlighted some stuff that stood out to me, and maybe we'll reference back to this as we go. I love this prayer. Holy cow. Like, what is this, and where did it come from? This is good stuff. We should begin every lesson plan with this prayer. Interpretation. What is the context? You give us a good bit of information here. Kind of give a little bit of the synopsis of the story. I added a couple things that if you wanted to add to interpretation, you could. First of all, the Greek word for deeply moved is embryomomoi. Let me try that again, because I'm sitting here trying to type. Embryomomoi. That is a weird word. Sounds like the name of this crazy Hawaiian fish. You know what I'm talking about? It's like 15 syllables. I don't know, that's what it reminds me of. But this means to feel something strongly that results in action. It's a word that occurs rarely in the Gospels, but it's similar in how it functions to the Greek word for compassion, which is ergsplegomoi or something like that. Both words have, just roll off the tongue. Similarly, compassion and this word both occur in the context of arousing compassion or pity. When that happens in that context, they're almost always based on audiovisual sensory experience. Jesus was moved when he saw her weeping, when she came and told him the story. Often, over and over again, this happens, and the point to be drawn from is just the fact that we're simply moved by experience. A good application question that you might want to write out of this is just the fact that, are you not moved to do great things or to meet God? Well, maybe that's because you haven't put yourself out there to where you can feel the draw or the pull, or for it to pop up on your moral radar because you don't look up from your phone, right? So, I don't know. If you want to make that work, you can. Just an idea. The word is interesting. Jesus cries in verse 35. This is the only instance of him crying in the Gospels. You should, if you would like, say a little bit about the human side of Jesus. And then he summons Lazarus. The raising of Lazarus is a verbal command in contrast to, for example, Mark, which we've been reading a lot of in this time period. The previous 7 gospel lessons before your 2 from... No. Everything around this time in the Trinity term is from Mark, except for this one gospel lesson from John. Because it's not in Mark, because Mark wouldn't have a miracle where it's not based on touch. So, an interesting distinction to make. This is perfect timing for you to talk about this. What else? Jesus prayed before he raised. Okay? That's an interesting pattern that is common. He prays to God, almost summoning the power of the miracle to work through him to raise Lazarus. I think I had a note here about something. There's a deep sense of awe at the power of God that was flowing through him to triumph over death. And his spirit does not refer to the Holy Spirit, but to Jesus' own spirit. That's about when he said, he was greatly disturbed in spirit. So whatever. That's not. This word is not in reference to the Holy Spirit. Also, by the way. Um, the stench, you talk about that. I love how you relate it to Walking Dead, and when he comes out, he does not eat anybody or try to. That's awesome. Right here, this is great up here. I like this, and also resuscitation. There's a classic distinction between resuscitation and resurrection. Um, Resuscitation, obviously, like you point out, wasn't someone just like at death's door, but you bring him back. He was straight up dead. But also the difference between the resurrection of Lazarus and the resurrection of Jesus is that Lazarus was raised by someone else. Jesus went down into death and then kicked the door in and kicked the door out and rolled up out of death himself because he had conquered it. Lazarus did not raise himself from the dead. And so, this is a resurrection-like story, but the true resurrection that Lazarus could never have done is the kind that Jesus will show him how to do. If you had been there to witness Lazarus rising from the grave, would you have believed? This is awesome. This whole section right here is a really great excursus on just, imaginative living through this experience and what would have been our reaction. This is exactly how the application part of lesson plan should go. I like how you pick through some possible ideas and really just stir the imagination to get kids to interact with this. This is perfect. Love it. This bottom thing, your reference to your past lesson plan and Bartimaeus, I've already read it, but even me having just read it, I'm still like, wait, what? The miracle of sight in order to believe? So maybe put a little refresher right here and remind people what you're talking about so that they don't have to flip back to your lesson plan and instead can just, right here during this week's lesson plan, just hit it and continue on and maintain the flow of the class. It's easy to get distracted by Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead and miss another important part. Talk about the resurrection and the life. A beautiful line. This is read in funeral liturgies. It's funny because this line that's read in funeral liturgies is taken from an example of what was not in the end of funeral for Lazarus. That's kind of cool. You could even do like a little reflection on the liturgy right there and what that means and why we use it that way. You could also just ask some questions. You could build a question out of this, I think, if you want to keep this in the application part, or just copy and paste this up into your interpretation as some background information, or drop it below into additional information, whatever you choose. Backing it up. This is great. You nail it right on the head in terms of, people just not backing up what they say. You kind of just give like excuses, being lazy. You give us all the stuff in the world and it just kind of happens, but Jesus doesn't cop out. Jesus delivers. Cool. Love it. Makes a lot of sense. Kids will definitely be able to relate to this. I think you should have a follow-up question though. I say that because you say, have you ever encountered anyone who had a lot to say but doesn't back it up? And then you do a lot. You kind of enter into, the possibilities of why we don't back it up. And then you say that Jesus does. And so I think you're really setting us up for one more question, which would be, what does it take to be the kind of person that backs up what we say? It's up to you. Faith and Doubt, this is great, and I love these quotes, especially Mark Twain. Just interesting, of all these quotes, they're all people of faith, more or less, except for Voltaire. He definitely, by saying certainty is absurd, he would kind of be referring to like the certainty of faith. So that would also be great for discussion as well, since he was an Enlightenment atheist. So this is awesome, really great. A couple small suggestions for you, but I think you have milked all you can get for an awesome lesson plan based on the